Damion Lupo joins me here today, and you could learn what his team is up to at FrameTech.com. That's going to be tech with a C. So it's FrameTech.com. You could learn what their team is up to here. We're going to be talking about a kind of a revolutionary way to do framing, which is a completely different topic than the last time you were on, Damion.
Yeah, it's a new world. I mean, that tells you how fast time goes by because it's been years since you and I were on here and we've brought to life something that was a dream for 30 years from the inventor of the whole system.
So let's get into this. Can you summarize what you're up to here? This seems like not only a great way to reduce waste, but getting construction going at a very rapid pace.
Yeah, we've got this huge problem especially in America with housing. We've got 6 to 10 million missing units, houses and apartments that need to be in place right now for there's a huge amount of demand. And that's a big part of why there's the affordability has become such a problem where people can't afford houses because there's too much demand for too little supply. And a big part of that is that there's a missing gap in the market for framing. You don't have enough people framing. And the system, the way that framing has been done for literally the last people are out in on a slab and they're putting boards up and they're slamming hammers or using nail guns. In fact, that was the last innovation was 1954 with the nail gun. And since then, nothing has really happened. We have some partners now that came up with this idea to completely change how houses and apartments were framed by building all the components, the walls, the trusses, the floors inside of a manufacturing plant, and then taking those and putting them up on site. And so instead of a process taking 2 months, it now takes 2 weeks for the entire framing from the time we get a design to the time a house is framed. So we've created a process so that framing is done 4 times faster. And the quality, because it's done inside of a manufacturing plant, is 10 times better because the tolerances are so much tighter. In addition, you hit it right on the head in the very beginning. Because our material handling process is a completely different way of handling wood, we have 99% less waste. So basically, we've got some sawdust, but there's no longer a dumpster full of end pieces. We're using pretty much all the wood. So 100 times less waste, which completely changes everything about this.
Yeah, like I said, there's a very brief video on your website that kind of breaks down what's going on here. And it looks like you're joining all of the end pieces, like some finger joints. It makes them like one continuous board that you can cut to length.
Yeah, so that what normally happens is you get walls that are, say, they're 10 and a half feet or something. And so the boards come in 2 foot increments. You get 10, 12, 14, 16 foot boards. And so everybody's just cutting off a foot or a foot and a half of these. The invention here is to use the finger joiner system where we take every board and we attach them together. So we have, like you said, one continuous board, and then we cut it, the exact pieces we want using this automated process that has the most advanced, technologically sophisticated and sustainable plant in the United States for doing this. And we have one continuous board that allows us to take our exact pieces and not have to waste unbelievable amounts of wood. So we can buy any size boards, which is also great because 6 foot boards usually are way less expensive than 20 foot boards. And then our system takes out all of the flaws, all the warps, the wanes, the wax, the knots, and it cuts those pieces out and then finger joints everything together so that we do have this giant board. I mean, this is a completely new thing. And the companies that have come and seen it are literally blown away. We've got 500 investors. A lot of them have come and seen it. And everybody realizes this is the future of framing. And they realize that this isn't just a pipe dream, it's actually producing. We started producing about
So you're talking about compressing the construction time, but based on what you're talking about here, combining boards and doing a few other things, the material cost has to go up quite a bit. Are you counteracting that because of the speed of delivery?
Yeah. So what happens is we're able to deliver this at the same price that builders are paying for framing, but we give them 10 times better quality and we do it 4 times faster, which means they're going to save a ton of money on the speed. And they're also going to save a ton by having predictability. So they know the exact day that they're going to have a house framed and they can put all of their other subs, the electricians and the plumbers right in behind. So ultimately that's going to compress the pricing and we're creating more supply in general. So more supply faster is going to create a better housing environment because the prices are going to end up going down as we scale up. It's in terms of capacity, it's just like the same capacity or shrinking And so we're counterpunching that with more capacity, especially in the framing. That's where the missing gap is. There's just not enough framers out there.
So earlier you mentioned somebody can send you plans, and I would imagine you're not being limited to just houses. Um, but that's also kind of surprising is that you're able to jump from plan to plan and accommodate the actual builder instead of just a cutter production.
Exactly. And so that's where a lot of times people say, oh, manufactured housing. They get this confused because they think of a plant that makes 5 houses. We can take any plan from a 2,000 square foot house to a shed to a dog house to a 20,000 square foot mansion to an apartment, a hotel, anything that's wood framed. And housing and apartments, 92% of those in America are wood framed. A wall is a wall. And our system has the ability with the automation to cut these pieces of wood and then put them all together, and then you end up with this incredibly high quality product for any type of wood structure. So it allows us to be very dynamic. We can produce 12 houses a day per plant, and it gives everybody the flexibility to come to us with their stuff. They don't have to comply with anything that we're saying. We literally can produce whatever somebody wants to build, and we can do it faster and better than anybody in the world.
How many plants are you operating at this point?
So the first one came online this last month, and then our second one, which is a double plant, comes online. It's being built next year. So we'll have 3 in Arizona, and then we've got the plants lined up to go online in Texas, the Carolinas, and Tennessee. And then ultimately, it looks like we'll end up having licensing going on around the country for other companies that want to build these and then run them. So my imagination is that between 10 and 15 years from now, you'll see 50 to 100 of these around the United States.
So do you deliver countrywide then?
So it's kind of like the mattresses used to be before they were being shipped around in a box. They were typically, there was a manufacturing plant for a mattress near every major metro center. And so this makes the most sense if they're delivered within 200 miles. But what's interesting is we've had a ton of people reaching out from places like Montana and places where it's really hard to get labor. And they're asking for us to do all of the building, and then they'll take it, literally they'll ship it up to where they are, because once it's there, it'll take 2, 3, 4 days for framers to put the stuff together. So it actually starts making a lot more sense, because to get framers to come out to a site for a month or two to build is almost impossible. And if you can do that, it's so expensive that it makes a lot of sense for us to ship. So realistically, we're going to be able to ship pretty much anywhere in the country.
Yeah. Based on everything we know about the increase in our population as of the last 4 years, that's also had a huge impact on the housing crisis. So this is becoming an increasingly hot issue.
Well, what's interesting is 4 or 5 years ago, we already had an issue with missing millions of missing homes. And then over the last 4 years, who knows, we've had, 10, 15 million people that have shown up here that are putting a lot of pressure on the housing. Now, whether or not, who knows how that turns out over the next couple of years with people potentially leaving, there's still going to be a lot more people needing housing. The good news is it looks like we're going to end up in a giant economic boom, so there's going to be a lot of activity, which is really interesting timing. And so FrameTech is really set up perfectly for the market that we're walking into with the political environment that seems to be unfolding in 2025.
So, like I had said at the beginning, this is completely different from what we talked about last time you were on. In fact, I'm going to have a link to that show in the show notes because you talked about your background and some perils, to say the least, that you experienced during that time. Could you talk a little bit like how did you find your way to this? Like it sounds fairly accidental, you mentioned.
Well, uh, about a decade ago, I started helping people with setting up retirement accounts so they could use 401ks and IRAs to invest in things outside of just stocks and mutual funds. And the whole premise of that, there was a mission to help people break their financial shackles to free them from financial bondage. And the entire point of everything I've been doing is to create more freedom for more people. Ultimately, it evolved to people had hundreds of millions of dollars. In fact, I think it's a couple billion now, and they're sitting on this money looking for things they can invest in. And so we started introducing people to different opportunities and sharing, here's what the community is doing, built this community of thousands of people. And then I had some friends that came to me and said, hey, we've got this thing that we're working on. We'd love to build, but it's going to cost us 50, $60 million. And can you help? And I said, well, I think so. Let's bring this to the community. And we really liked the deal, but we loved the people that were going to operate it. And that's what it comes down to. It's the people that execute on anything. And so what we did is we brought it to our community, and our community said, yes, we love this as much as you love it. And people came together and we brought the money in and we built it. And it was because it fit the mission. So it's very easy for me to say no to most things because they're out of alignment with what the mission is and to create more freedom for more people. And then when this came in, I was like, these are the right people and this is the right deal and it's the right time. So when all those things came together, it was a very easy yes because the framework had been set on how I can say yes or no to anything that comes at me.
So, yeah, with the construction and the building of the lumber and the framing, and you're reassembling some of this in your facility and then shipping, are you sending crews to those areas as well to put it up?
Yeah, this is a vertically integrated company. So we get the only thing that we're not doing is growing the trees. I mean, at this point, once we take we get the plans, and 2 weeks later, a builder is going to have a house framed up and sitting on a slab. Like we do the entire process from building all the components in the plant to our own trucks, bring all the walls and the floors and everything out, and then we put it together. So no longer do builders have to try to coordinate all these different subs and trying to get the framers out there. And they know that exactly on X day, they're going to have their house or the apartment that's going to be done. And it's very predictable for them. So it takes a huge headache out of their life and creates a lot more certainty. It's actually allowed some builders to say, you know what, instead of building 100 houses next year, we're going to plan on building 500 or 800 because they know that we solved this huge problem that was preventing them from really being able to build as many as they wanted to.
What are some of the biggest challenges that you faced getting something like this off the ground?
The biggest challenge, quite frankly, is that we don't have enough plants open. We've got way more demand. One of the cool things is we're building these plants in more rural areas on purpose to give people a chance to live in rural areas that don't want to be in a big city. And so it's creating a boom for these rural areas, these communities. And people realize that our culture is completely different. The way that we treat people, the way that we look at them, they're not cogs, they're not expenses, they're part of our family. The reality is we're doing things that people can see and they realize, hey, this is where I want to be. We're on a mission to solve a problem. We're doing things to not only have a really profitable company and to do this in alignment with being kind and gentle to the planet, but when people come in here, the things that we do are so different. Not only do we have a cafeteria to help feed our people with really healthy food, but we've got a child care facility that we're putting in so that they can have their kids. No blue collar, no manufacturing company that I'm aware of in the country does anything like that. It's only like the Googles that have those type of things. So people can actually have their kids with near them and they're not racing off, having one parent going out and working just for the child care. We're actually providing that. In addition, we're putting a wellness, so we have an on-site doctor and medical team so that we can keep our families that work for us healthy. So we're not just saying, here's your health insurance, go off and get your next drug. Come in here and we're going to help you stay healthy ahead of schedule, which all that stuff combined shows people that we care. It's not just lip service. It's actually a culture where we take care of people. And one of the crazy realities, and it makes sense when you think about it, people are never going to leave. So it's actually really good for business to invest in the welfare of our people. And I'm hopeful that is not only a model for manufacturing, but it's more of a model for business in America going forward, that you can do really well by the people and by your community and by the environment and have an incredibly profitable organization at the same time.
Just to remind everybody, if you want to learn more about this product, head over to frametech.com. That's tech with a C at the end. So FRAMETEC.com. That's going to be a clickable link in the show notes. If you found some value in what we're talking about so far, do us a quick favor, share this with one of your investor friends. And if you're watching us on YouTube, give us a quick like and subscribe. So, this is always so fascinating regarding any kind of business that you've kind of niched and you found your sweet spot. You're framing these buildings, you're not finishing them, right? You're framing them, you're putting them up. How do you keep the guardrails to make sure you're not distracted by the next thing? It seems like you have your hands full now just scaling with your specialty.
Yeah, it goes back to a lot of people with a lot of experience. And one of the things that we're really clear on is who we are and what we do. And ultimately down the road, there's always the possibility to add new focus on things that are in alignment with what we're doing. Our mission here is to solve the housing crisis. It's not just framing, it's ultimately going to be figuring out ways to help plumbers and electricians and all these other trades do better, not only do better and create more, but do it better without destroying the planet and do it more profitably. So we've got basically an innovation center going on. Everything we do is framing. We're asking how can the way we're doing framing help other trades? How can we help the environment at the same time? So that's the focus. Everything that comes at us that is trying to distract us, it's pretty easy because if anybody got real excited about something, we collectively push the idea off to the side unless it's helping support our core. Because if you get lost on your core, you end up being like a drunk squirrel chasing shiny nuts, and that's not good for anybody.
Right. So could you give us an example, like from beginning to end, like based on the compression and the cost of the material and everything, where do the numbers typically land? Are they equivalent to building costs now? Is it how much of a reduction? Can you kind of give us a summary as to what somebody could maybe expect using your system?
Yeah. So what they're going to expect is they're going to pay basically what the market is. I mean, right now, we if we wanted to, we could charge a premium because of the quality and the speed. But what we're doing is we're delivering a better quality, literally 10 times better quality and 4 times faster at the same price. So depending on what labor, what lumber costs are, framing is basically a function of how much are my raw materials, and then there's a margin. And so that's kind of how the industry works. When lumber went up, went up 3, 4x over a few years ago, that everybody had to raise their framing costs, and that's just how the market is. So what happens is all these builders that have access to us that are in our area are saying, okay, we want you to do all of our stuff. And it's because they realize that they're going to be more profitable by using us, even when they're paying the same amount, because they're saving so much time and they can predict everything else. It ends up to where their bottom line expands because they made a different choice. And a lot of things that people worry about. They worry about, am I going to have some type of lawsuit later because my quality is off? There's always that concern. One of the things that we do with our system, we track every piece of wood. We know where every piece of wood for every truss and every floor and every wall, we know where it came from. We have photos of every joint. So there's more quality control and more attention to detail and more tracking of everything than any other manufacturer or any other construction company in the world, as far as we know. That helps the builder really ultimately be more profitable because they don't have to worry about these defect lawsuits like they would with a normal system where everything's kind of off a little bit here and there. Our stuff is quality controlled, kind of like a Toyota plant. Our tolerances are probably 20 to 50 times tighter than you'd ever see in the field.
Hmm. So what's the smallest project you would take on and what's the biggest one you've done?
So the smallest so far that I've seen in the plant, I watched. It was kind of an oversized dog house. It was a shed for somebody that they wanted, and it's not the niche. The niche is really 2,000 square foot houses that are a track home community and apartments. But I mean, the plant has the ability to anything that's wood framed. It's You just have to ask yourself, what's the best thing for us to do? How can we produce the most with the least amount of materials and deliver the most to the market? So there's what we'd ideally like to do. Can we do anything? Yeah, but it's like the 25,000 square foot custom home that has all sorts of weird things. It just takes longer to do and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So we're going to mostly stay in our lane with rare exceptions because it's not just about some prized building that we can say we built. It's about delivering more housing to society. That's why we exist.
Mhm. And one of the buzzwords I happen to notice on your webpage, though, is AI. How are you leveraging AI for this?
Well, it's funny because I think at this point, AI is being baked into everything. Like everywhere you see, it's like AI. There's a little character that you click on, and AI is happening. With our system, all the machines have AI that they have. It's a learning system. So all of our scanners that are figuring out what defects we have in wood that we were going to cut out. All that stuff is learning. It's learning with how much water is in the wood, and it's learning. It's just constantly understanding the system better so it can be faster and more efficient. And whatever waste we do have, it reduces it. So it's a giant learning system, and it's kind of like Tesla is out there, all these cars and all that data from driving. It just learns how to do better and be smoother. And as a firsthand Tesla driver, I can tell you a year ago, it was a little bit different driving around, letting this car try to drive you, and it was kind of jerking you around. Now it's really, really smooth. And so our system continues to learn. And because it's all integrated together, all the AI is integrated together, it's thinking, which is a little bit weird. So it could be Terminator at some point where the plant comes to life and tries to take over. but it, but
Yeah, it's kind of frame you up a cage. That's what it's
it it who knows? We're living in some wild times with the automation, but it is fully learning all the time. What'll happen is it's taking incredible amounts of data and compressing it and things that humans could not do. It's taking all of it and making sense of it and then giving us feedback on what adjustments could be made and what things we should add.
So, what are your future plans here? You kind of mentioned you're going to be building some more of these facilities, but what else are you planning on here?
So the idea is to build more of these facilities because this is such a core piece that's missing in the construction with housing. So we build them across the country, primarily in the Sun Belt, where there's very pro business and a lot of growth, a lot of people coming in, and then we continually use our R&D thinking to help other trades and make everybody more efficient and more profitable. So the plan is to solve the housing crisis. FrameTech, the company to do the framing, is part of it, and part of it is the culture of innovation, ingenuity, and really serving the three P's: the people, the planet, and making things profitable. What's also interesting is one of the questions that often comes up. People say, "Oh, you have this technology with these finger joints, and is that like are they safe? Are they strong?" And what's crazy is we have a lab. We have the most sophisticated lab in the country that's better than third party labs to test all of our joints. Our joints are actually stronger than the wood. So when you try to break the wood, it breaks not at the joint because the glue, it creates this interesting space that's stronger. And when you try to yank these boards apart, the board fiber itself will break, but the joint will stay intact. It's really cool that and this is the stuff that we need. We need more of the innovation. So we're constantly asking, what else could we do? And we have a mad scientist, our chief innovation officer, Marvin, who's on the website. He's a cartoon on there. He's the one that came up with this 15, 20 years ago. And it's been his dream for decades. And at 81 years old, he cannot stop innovating. The guy has new ideas to integrate. And that's our culture. It's constantly pushing past where we are and never getting stagnant. And that's where we're going to drive into all the trades, helping them do the same thing because we need that across the board if we're going to solve this problem.
Yeah, you'll have to forgive that I didn't ask that because I actually probably naively I assumed the glued joint is stronger. So I didn't even think about asking that. So now you got a different question in front of you. You're helping an 81-year-old man finally realizing his dream. He obviously never gave up on this concept until he finally found the right people to make it a reality. What lesson is to be learned there?
Well, I think that one of the things that people ask, how do you do this? And why didn't Marvin quit? Why didn't he give up? When it's your dream, the only time you're going to quit is when you're dead. If it's really truly something that's baked into you, the key is you have to create the reason that $60 million was able to be brought to the table was because of relationships, because of deep trust. People will say, how do I go do that? You don't just go out and yell into the wild and say, I need $60 million. You create relationships, you create a community, and that takes time, it takes energy, and it takes a lot of effort and resiliency to serve people. So just having a bunch of people around isn't the same thing. You got to find a way to serve people and build those relationships that ultimately make it very easy. There's a book Stephen Covey wrote called The Speed of Trust. And that's what this is. The reason that this is able to be done so fast is because the trust is so high. And the trust started with relationships that began 30 years ago with a bunch of us. And then the community of thousands of people has grown over the last decade. And so when something comes up like this, it's not really that much of a leap to have people come together and say, we want to build this together. And I'll tell you, we had a couple of events this year with investors that came out. Last time was about a month ago. We had like 150 people out here and they got to walk into the plant in Arizona and see what they were and how they've taken part in something that's so transformational and revolutionary. It's a really special thing to be a part of that. And everyone that was there feels the same way. They're very, very grateful to be a part of it. And it happened because everybody was investing in relationships for many years.
Is there a question or concept you wish we would have covered at this point?
If everybody, I think everybody should ask, am I doing something that's helping society at the scale that I really have the potential to do? I think people shortchange themselves or they give up on their dreams or they're truly just not thinking big enough. And when you think big enough, there's this interesting side effect that happens. Oftentimes people are trying to figure out how they're going to get the money. And I laugh when I look at this thing. This thing has created more wealth for more people in a shorter period of time than anything I've ever seen. And it's because we're thinking about a solution for a problem that's as big as any problem out there. And so that's a big part of changing our lives is to think beyond ourselves and into the space of what's a giant problem I can go work on And then all of a sudden you have all these cool things like fulfillment and money and joy, and you wake up fired up. So that's the thing that I think is missing for a lot of people. If they can use this as a model, then this helps transform a lot of people on an individual basis as well as society at large.
Well, Damien, this was fantastic. Really appreciate you joining me here again today. And if you're ready, we'll jump into the rapid fire questions and close out this episode.
Let's do it.
First of all, what lie do real estate investors sometimes tell themselves?
That they're that real estate is easy and passive. There's the all the money is made in the active. So I laugh when people say, "Oh, the money just shows up in your mailbox with no effort." That's a really good way to learn a lot and to lose a lot.
If you could go back in time and give your younger self a piece of advice, what would it be?
Make sure you have older, wiser, balder people around you that have been around at least an extra season or two, and shut up and listen to whatever they're saying, and then and do what they're saying instead of thinking that you know too many things because you've had a little bit of success.
Do you have a book recommendation?
There's a book that I read many years ago, and I reread it over and over. It's called Mastery by George Leonard. He was a martial artist. And the book is about martial arts and life. And the whole point of mastery is this process that you go through. Instead of saying, I'm just going to go get a black belt or I'm just going to go get $1 million, it's this process of developing yourself. I have this vision for people that it's this 10-step process to creating $10 million. And it's not about the money, but it's about who you become in this process of mastery. The book really helps you understand how that works and that life should be a process of you pursuing mastery, not trying to get to mastery, and then embracing things like the plateauing when you're just beating your head into a wall because eventually all of a sudden you pop over the wall or through the wall or something happens. When you're focused on mastery in a process, you start to realize how things work together. It takes the angst of trying to get to an event away. And I love that. So I studied that book and I reread it over and over again.
What single strategy, process, or tool have you implemented that has had the biggest time saving impact to you or your business?
The biggest time saving impact, I think the biggest one that I don't do as often as I should is is literally disconnecting into nature because I waste a ton of time when I go 24/7 because I'm at a 50% efficiency. And when I disconnect and go to nature, I get this recharge. And so I'm super efficient and focused when I'm actually working, which is most of the time. And every time I skip that for a while, I start realizing I'm dragging along at half effort. So it's that one thing. It's not high tech. It's very high connection though.
Well, Damien, this was fantastic. One last time, it is frametech.com. That's going to be a clickable link in the show notes, but really appreciate you coming back. It was great to catch up.
It's great to see you too.